Hello and welcome to this week's No Excess Required. So once again, I'm talking about Sony, and I can't tell you how much I'd like to be able to stop talking about Sony. But this rather glacial demise that they've committed themselves to is nothing short of astounding. Sony is currently facing a series of what can only be described as major lawsuits, class actions in fact. There's one here in the UK. It's an antitrust lawsuit and is being filed to the tune of £1.7 billion. The Dutch Fair Play Station lawsuit is also underway to the tune of €457 million. I mean, the amounts of money involved here are staggering. And in the US, there's also an historic antitrust case underway. All these lawsuits are slowly going to bleed Sony of money. They're going to create problems for the company. It's not going to be as buoyant as it once was, and investor shareholder confidence won't be as positive as it could be. Add to this the absolutely staggering decision to end physical media on the PlayStation in January of 2028, and you have to ask yourself, what the fuck is going on? But the decision by Sony to end physical games by 2028 is a double-edged sword and cuts both ways. And I've just mentioned investor confidence. And this decision is meant to give investors a little confidence back. If Sony are willing to weather this backlash against all good sense and reason, this new decision, this new high-stakes play that they're undertaking, stands to see them net as a company millions of more dollars. They keep all the revenue from all the digital games that they sell. Not only that, they can use dynamic pricing in any territory at whatever level they wish. They can even use dynamic pricing on an individual basis, if the laws in that particular area allow it. But Sony now for a very long time has been sailing very close to the wind. It walks that fine line and teeters over the edge on an ongoing basis. And over the last few years, Sony has courted risk like no other large company in this particular sphere. And so as Sony makes increasingly more bizarre decisions in its gaming division, the head honcho there decides to sell a shitload of stock. Now this isn't new news, and taken in the round, taken in context, it seems, as I say, a little bit bizarre. Hiroki Totoki sold or dumped, depending on whatever viewpoint you want to take, over 50% of his holdings, which amounted to a dollar value of 4.75 million clams, give or take some loose change. Was this just a normal de-risking of his portfolio? Or does he see the writing on the wall? Is he literally soiling himself and so divesting himself of everything he can before the inevitable fall, before the inevitable restructure? He's the head man. Maybe he can see a scenario where the shareholders decide this just isn't going well at all. There's just too much backlash, too much bad press. And bad press is never a good thing. It undermines investor confidence. And the fact that Sony hasn't been willing to make changes in its gaming division's management says a lot about where they are. It seems as though internally they can't see the wood for the trees. And so the only thing left to do is run. It is interesting to watch this slow death that Sony is inflicting upon itself. We can only hope that at some point things are clarified, because the current trajectory is doing nothing but making things worse. We have an old saying here in the UK, just when you think things can't get any worse, give it a minute. Well, here we are, with Sony taking every minute after minute that it can possibly get its grubby hands on. And as we move forward in time, Sony, bizarrely, seems to be moving backwards in a business sense. Say what you want. Plans within Sony are afoot. Changes are being made, and we are not privy to the decision-making and thinking that is going into these decisions. And so, as bizarre and insane as they might appear to us, It can't be denied that Sony has a view of the world that we as interested parties don't. But at this point, it's clear. The decision to dispense with physical copies of games in 2028 is going to follow them round for some time. And I'm glad that it is going to follow them round. As I said in a previous video, I hope they feel every inch. This is a bad decision. People love physical objects. Yes, there's no denying that digital copies are popular because they're just convenient. But people like that there's a choice. And as soon as you remove that choice then becomes an imperative. Even Hideo Kojima has stated publicly on the X platform that he is now buying up physical copies of movies and all games. A man deeply embedded in the industry is effectively media prepping. And I, for one, like the cut of his jib. And likewise, I'm buying more media. Because 2028 will come around far too quickly. And many people who are watching this unfold will reach that point and exclaim, "Don't!" And they will be caught in a closed ecosystem, helpless and unable to influence anything that PlayStation does within that ecosystem. That's assuming, of course, these lawsuits don't have the desired effect and make PlayStation walk everything back. And so in closing, I say to all of you, 2028 is just around the corner. If you're going to be spending any of the money that you don't have, spend it on physical copies. Because when grocery prices go through the roof and you can't afford to go anywhere, you'll be glad of the fact that you have a physical library that you can rely on. And a load of albums that you can just sit down, pop in your CD player and listen to. Do let me know what you think in the comments below. Do like, subscribe and share, it really would help the channel. And until next time, bye bye.